we think we're limiting ourselves by not doing everything when really we're watering down our efforts and not building traction. When you can build traction in one area, you start building steam and you start building in cash flow and you start building in attraction, and then you can start building out bigger teams. But if you start out of the gate with that, you're going to get burnt out, you're going to get watered down, and you're not going to be as effective.
Welcome to the Head Smack Podcast, where we have candid conversations with misfits and mavericks, those not afraid to stand up and stand out, the dreamers and the doers, the ones who've stumbled, fumbled, and then soared. Here we delve into the inspiring journeys and pivotal aha moments that have shaped their worlds. And maybe through sharing their adventures, you'll get hit with a head smack that'll change your destiny. Welcome to the Head Smack Podcast. My name is Paul Pavolny, and I am glad to have a misfit along for the ride today. This misfit is Heather Parady. Heather is a mental health therapist turned into online entrepreneur. She helps out-of-the-box thinkers and leaders bring their services online to scale their impact. Heather, welcome to the Head Smack Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I love this whole misfit situation. Sounds like my people.
This is your people, and I love everything that you're doing. Heather got my attention through her videos, and your videos are amazing. Your short form videos, I've seen them, well produced, great content, super high value, and I absolutely love what you're doing. And when I saw those, I thought, well, I need to talk to Heather and bring her on to not only talk about short form video, but also to talk about a little bit about your origin story. As I read, you started off as a mental health therapist. Tell me a little bit about your origin story. Where did it start? What led you into therapy, and what led you out of it?
Well, let's stick with the word misfit. I had somebody the other day tell me, I said something along the lines of struggling when I was younger, and they're like, and I was like, what's that? And they're like, hey, I don't know. I just assumed you were the type that was like popular and a cheerleader and blah, 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 confident. Like you're one of those people. And I'm like, sit down and let's have a conversation because I have built confidence and I've learned how to be comfortable in my skin. But growing up, and I'm getting to the therapy thing, I was homeschooled my entire life. I really struggled in school. My education stopped at a very early age due to just some issues in my family and just not doing school, for quite frankly. Lived pretty isolated and really insecure. I also grew up in like heavy religion that kind of taught me that not one person, but just what I heard was that we were supposed to live small, and my role was really going to be more into a ministry perspective and being a wife to some pastor or something like that. Not that any of that's wrong, but it was just a very, I already had poor confidence just from some things, like I said, the education component and so forth, but then also marrying that with feeling like God's plan for me was to be a martyr, pretty much. There was just this really weird narrative around just like unworthiness and my life is nothing. And I think that's there's a beautiful essence to it that a lot of Christians want to, a beautiful thing, but it was detrimental for me.
Yeah.
And that kind of led me towards ministry off the bat. So I wanted to go into full-time ministry. I did a ministry training program for several years. That was the heartbeat of everything that I did was God, Jesus, Bible, ministry, get everybody saved. Long story short, some stuff went down where I just kind of had a hard fall from church and religion, not God, but just not really buying into all of that anymore, which I'm brushing over that piece.
Yeah.
But the whole ministry thing was still there where I wanted to help people. And so the next, for me, logical thing of, okay, well, if you're not going to be a pastor, you be a therapist because that's kind of like a pastor, right? So did the therapy thing.
So how was that really? Because for some people, therapy and religion and faith almost seem like that's you don't need that. Just just pray, just talk to Jesus, and everything will be okay.
Yeah, when I was in graduate school, I was actually in a sermon where they were literally yelling into the microphone that you don't need a therapist, you need Jesus. And I'm like, this is the most unhealthy message ever. Yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends on the folks. I mean, some people think that it's a sign of weakness, and if you're living correctly, you're not going to have issues. And my personal beliefs now with God is that like everything is connected, and so therapy is a tool and a way to. Some people have a gift to see into you and ask the best questions, and it's like a natural remedy medicine, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
did you
yeah,
wrestle with that decision? Like, is that
sure.
a legit thing to reach
Sure.
out for? Yeah.
Well, I was telling somebody the other day that, um, it's only been recently that I've come to terms with my calling, my purpose right now is God's quote will for me, and I'm living in my highest calling. Because for several years I would have thought that I had abandoned God's calling on my life
Mm,
because I wasn't in ministry, and now I just don't believe any of that shit anymore. It's
yeah.
like I have such a wider view, but it was very hard. I felt like I was disappointing people. I had people messaging me feeling like I had fallen away, like
Wow.
ridiculous, like because I'm
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
school to be a therapist. You know what I mean? Like, wow, that's pretty dark. you
Right.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's weird the mental hold that some of these institutions can have on you, and when you get healed and you look back, you think, "That's ridiculous," but it feels
Right.
so real in the moment.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And so that journey led you into therapy. How long did you do that before you moved to other things as a misfit?
I got my license, I got 2 job offers, and I quit. So not long. Not
Wow.
long, Paul, not long. I was in the waiting room and to go to the interview, and I remember tearing up and crying. I went into the interview and cried because I didn't wanna be there. And I still got the job, which was awesome. So they must have been desperate AF, to hire some crying girl. They called me and said I got the job, and I cried again. And my husband was like, most people don't cry when they get job offers, but I knew in my gut that I wanted to build something on my own.
Yeah.
Um, I just have that weird nudge. I've tried being an employee multiple times, and I'm not an entrepreneur. I've come to terms with that. I'm a creator. I have an
Yeah.
entrepreneurial tendencies, but I don't think about eating money and making money and money, money, money. I think about making,
Yeah.
making, making. Entrepreneurship has just afforded me the flexibility to create, if that makes sense. So yeah, I
Yeah.
quit like almost immediately. Had a mental breakdown because I turned away money, and we needed the money at the time.
Yeah.
Um, Young family, paid out of pocket for graduate school. My husband sacrificed so much to put me through it, and he was in the military at the time, like, not making a ton of money, so here I am, not a great time to start a business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But Lord Jesus, I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. And so you wrestled with, thinking that therapy was the way you wanted to go, and
Mhm,
then deciding at the end, like, actually, it's not. This is not
mhm,
who I am. This is not
mhm,
what I want to be. And so you launched into being a creator. What was
mhm.
that like? What was the first thing that you kind of launched into? Because it's an interesting discussion of, I've talked to several folks about the difference between an entrepreneur and a business owner,
Yep,
and you've introduced a new realm of creator. Talk to me
yep.
a little bit about that. Was that the first thing you ventured into, or what was the first thing you ventured into after leaving therapy?
So I had a pretty successful photography business in grad school. I ran that for about 5 years. I mean, I wasn't making millions of dollars, but I was traveling all over different states. I was constantly booked. I had a really great clientele, and it wasn't because, in my opinion, that I was a fantastic photographer. I knew how to build a client base and how to market. I was pretty good
Hmm.
at that. And so when I got out of graduate school and decided, hey, I'm not going to become a therapist, I was thinking, okay, what are the tools in my hand? What are the things that I know how to do? And photography taught me editing. I was very comfortable with visual elements of stuff. I had just recently started a podcast on my own. So I had these skills that I had developed, and I just started freelancing. I remember turning down the job offer. I kid you not. I kid you not. I put in the email, I hit send. I'm sitting there crying. My husband's on the phone. I'm like, I'm so stupid. Ding. Right after that, swear to God, I got an email from a lady named Linda. I barely knew Linda, but Linda said, hey, Heather, do you edit podcasts? I need some help. I said, "I sure do, Linda. Absolutely."
Right.
Sorry, Linda, I kind of figured out how to do it by editing your podcast, but it was just like a series of that, of saying yes to things and skill
Yeah.
stacking and building up. And it was usually all in the creative element. So it was like podcasting, social media stuff. It was all media creative related. Um, I didn't love everything, and it wasn't something that I was going to do I knew it wasn't going to do for the rest of my life. But again, it afforded me the freedom to figure out what I wanted to do next.
Yeah. And I think that for a lot of us is the learning and the creativity sometimes comes from the necessity of doing something.
Totally.
And so
Totally.
with you, doing the editing somebody else's podcast, you figured stuff out pretty quickly and
100%.
realized that you're good at it. You actually did it well, especially with launching your own podcast as well. And so when it comes to the creative part of you, talk a little bit about creative restraint. What is creative restraint, and what does that mean to you?
Recently, so we fast forward, that was 7, 8 years ago, I don't remember. Fast forward, skill stacking over and over again. Eventually, I'm out of the freelance space, now have a agency. We work in digital product development right now with folks, and I've always still been creating on the side. So I just had somebody call me the other day, a creative director, and he's like, "Heather, how do you make a full-time living as a content creator?" I said, "I'm not making a full-time living as a content creator." Like, people assume that. Now, granted, I've had a lot of cool clients come from my content. I've had 4 speaking gigs this year from my content. Like, stuff's coming from my content, but I still am not making a full-time living off my content. I
Yeah,
have a business, and I want people to know that, because that's the reality for a lot of creators, and that's okay. It doesn't
yeah,
it doesn't matter. So all that to say, we're running a really cool agency. I have a lot of fun with it. It's still not my number one passion. Creativity still is. So I've been consistently making ever since I left that job interview. Now, last year, I kind of got to a point of frustration where I was experiencing success in podcasting. I've had, top ranking shows. I've done really well with that. Um, but the social media side, I hadn't been able to figure out my voice and my lane. And I was like, I have been consistent. You know what I mean? Like, I
yeah,
don't know many people who are as consistent as I am. Saturday nights, I eat dinner at this desk and I edit and I make things, and I've been doing it for years. I barely miss 1,000 plus interviews between all, my shows. I've put out hundreds of videos. I've done the fucking work that
yeah,
Gary Vee says to do. At what point does this work? Or am
yeah,
I just not good? You know what I mean? Which, there's something there. It's a whole other conversation. All that to say, to your point of creative restriction, last July, I got mad, and I had been making a lot of videos, trying different series. And I said, you know what? I am going to sit my ass in a blue chair that I have in my office, and I'm going to do, just, I always said I would never do this,
hmm,
but a face to camera series. And I'm not going to let myself get up from this chair until I figure out what I'm trying to say.
wow,
So I was being a pouty ass little baby, but what I didn't realize is that there is this tool that creatives use a lot. And Rick Rubin talks about it in the Creative Act. And if you start paying attention, you'll hear it more and more. And it's creative restriction. So when you're overwhelmed with a lot of things to do, limit yourself intentionally to something that's almost painful, because then it forces like a creative genius to come out of you.
hmm,
And so for me right now, it's been forcing myself to sit in this chair and tell stories in 60 seconds. Um, and I'm not going to necessarily do that forever, but it's been interesting to see how
yeah.
I've grown, and how it's working.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And that's one thing that I've always said is limitations breed innovation. And so when
Hmm.
you limit yourself, you get very innovative, you get very
Hmm.
creative. And one of the reasons that I first got onto Twitter in 2007, was because of the 140 character limitation.
Totally.
I thought, well, what would it look like for me to try and say something that I find interesting that others might find interesting, with the limitation of trying to get it into 140 characters. And so I'd write something and then I have to edit it back and edit it
Yep.
back until I got it to a point where it still made sense, but it still had the strength of what I wanted to say. And so I love the creative restraint of setting yourself limitations and guidelines, because creatives, when a creative hits a blank canvas,
Yeah.
with zero restrictions, with zero rules, it can be paralyzing.
Yep.
You find yourself just stuck, and you're like, I have so many directions I could go in, and I don't know which direction to go in, and they get paralyzed. They stare at a blank screen, the blank screen of death. And so sometimes creating that restriction and creating guidelines, and saying, I'm only going to do it this way, or I'm going to follow this path, or I'm going to put these restrictions on it, actually is liberating, right?
Totally.
And so that's what you found with wanting to do these videos, and the videos are fantastic.
Thank you.
But that came out of a point of restraint. What other ways has that creative restraint helped you, that you found after that aha moment of doing that?
So it's caused me to hyper fixate and study elements of the video that I'd never would have before, because since I'm restricted to sitting in one spot and there's a general format I have, which is some kind of pop cultural reference hook at the beginning, I usually tie it into some other, like a podcast or something, and then I end it with a book. Having that's non-negotiable for me. So now it's freed up the rest of my brain
Yeah.
to hyperfixate on small little things that I didn't ever pay attention to before. So the first 3 words of the video, that's what I'm really obsessed with right now, is figuring out how do I craft what I'm trying to say in one sentence down to 3 words. I've been really interested in retention editing. I used to, like, it's really popular right now to have, like, a lot of transitions and a lot of this and that, and I kinda did that for a few videos. If you scroll back a couple months ago, I took a course and I was really excited and I was like there was all these flashes and all this stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then now it's like, okay, now I'm curious, what aids the story by adding it versus just me adding noise. So I know it sounds so ridiculous, but even the smallest thing of, like, I used to do like these jump cuts that were really, really fast. And
right,
now my
right,
jump
yeah,
cuts are getting a lot slower, and thinking through what word needs to be emphasized. And it's all these little tiny micro ridiculous details that I never
yeah.
really would have started learning about unless I'd restricted myself. And back to the skills stacking, I believe at some point, my soft goal right now is 100 of these videos, and then I'm gonna reevaluate and try something maybe different. But going into my next projects, now that I've hyper focused on these small little things, I can't wait to see what I can create with that new knowledge.
Now, are you somehow measuring the difference it makes, those little minor tweaks, or are you just seeing? Are you looking at it as the storytelling is what you're measuring?
Yeah, such a great question. I think I am looking at just retention overall. I get feedback from people. I've historically not been super good at that, but over the past few months, I've always felt like I bother people. Like, if you're my friend or somebody I respect, would you mind looking at this for me? But I just kind of got over that recently, where I'm like now bothering people, like, hey, give me feedback. What do you think? So I use that as a measure. And then honestly, my own taste and trusting that a little bit more. Because I still go back to this sometimes, where you feel like there's a right or a wrong way of doing things versus just like getting really still and quiet and tuning in and watching it and be like, would I like this? Would
Right.
I follow this chick? And sometimes I'm like, no, this is annoying AF. I can't stand this. Um, but just trying to develop my own taste as a creative.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes that's, evaluating stuff is just common sense. Like, what
Yep.
what do I feel about
Yep.
this? What do I think about it? Now, some people don't care. Some people are like, it could be irritating, or frustrating, or
Yep.
interesting, or awkward, or weird, or whatever. But I think for creating your own content and understanding who you are and what you're about, and looking at it and saying, I'm kind of my audience, or at least I kind of feel I'm in that space that my audience might be, and what do I feel about it? How do I
Totally.
look at this? and that makes a difference. So with the videos that you're doing, and the people that you're helping, what are you doing next? Like, what's your next thing that you're experimenting with?
I want to produce more shorts, more films. I want to be a part of uh, it's interesting. I live close to Atlanta, and I've been getting involved in the film scene there for the past few years. And I'm seeing there's obviously a huge shift in traditional entertainment and what we're seeing on social right now. And I'm so excited to be alive during this time because I feel like creators are figuring out, what is it going to look like over the next 25, 50 years, the entertainment media space, and then independent creators who are making their own stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so all that to say, my long-term goal is to eventually get paid to create where I can let go of my business and do this full time. I want to start producing a little bit longer form content. So it's not just on social. If I quit everything, I'd have to give up my job and everything to make YouTube videos. I could do that.
Right.
I'm not emotionally there yet. I don't know if I could, that's going to be a huge sacrifice, but that's the realm I want to go into next is longer form, but stuff that's scripted, very kind of story oriented. I had somebody DM me the other day and they're like, we really wish you would take your videos and make them into, 4 or 5 minute pieces that go a little bit more into your story and journey of figuring it out. And I'd love to do that. It'll happen.
Now, with the
So
long form, is it long form teaching, training, inspiration, motivation, or is it more, mini movies, short movies type thing? What do you mean by the long form videos? What is that content?
I haven't figured out how to articulate this yet. I don't know if you've ever felt something in your heart and your spirit and you haven't been able to put words to it just yet. But the reason that I do the videos that I do is I love spirituality, mental health. Back to the ministry stuff. I love wrestling with deeper topics, and it annoys so many people. Like if you come to my house and you're playing Catan with me, I'll be like, so, what is your life's calling? What is your deepest wound? And how do you think that plays into your strength? And you're like, girl, I'm just trying to eat a Dorito. Leave me alone. That's me.
Yeah,
So I've been trying to figure out, okay, how do I make that stuff interesting and entertaining and funny and light to be a bridge for folks who wouldn't normally talk about that to start thinking about other stuff. So if I started off, I wish I had it here. If I started off my video with Stephen King's book on writing, you might immediately dismiss it and be like, I'm not a writer. I don't care anything about Stephen King, whatever. But if I start it with a story about Lady Gaga and her mental health journey and blah, 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 and then I wrap it to a core principle and truth from Eckhart Tolle or whoever, then I might help be an entry drug to you to something that's
yeah.
changed my life, which is personal development and personal growth. So, God, I'm long-winded.
No, this is
60,
amazing. Yeah.
60-second storytelling, girl who won't shut up. Back to your original thing, the long-form content, I want to figure out a creative way. No, I don't want to do coaching, motivation. And somebody told me the other day, I was like, you're like a motivational speaker. And I wanted to punch them in the face. I want to figure
No.
out
Yeah.
how do you bridge entertainment and spirituality and mental health and all that and not make it lame AF, but actually make something quality. It might be the same format I'm doing. It might be through storytelling, movie type things, but that's my goal.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, and I love the discussion about creativity, because I
I
think
love it. I love it.
people don't want to admit this, but creatives rule the world, really, because
Hey, freaking men.
everything that you are
Yes.
wearing,
Yes.
everything, your microphone, your clothing, your hairstyle, your shoes you wear, I mean, everything a creative created. And creatives have far more impact that people give them credit for the good and for the
Yes.
bad, because the
Amen.
creatives are the storytellers, the creatives are the people that translate the complex into ways that people can understand it through
Yes.
stories, through song, through
Yes.
movies, through plays, through all of that stuff. And so, there is a lot of power in in the creative realm and in creatives as well. And so I love what you're doing, even with the the short form and the long form video is, translating those ideas and all of the stuff that you've kind of stacked on you. You look at that and it's like, hey, I pursued that, but I didn't do it. I pursued that and then I left it. I pursued that. But now you look back and it's like, wow, that was actually all played a part in me being
Huge,
who I am today. And now
huge.
I can use that in a powerful way. And I think that's amazing. And I think storytelling and these long form stories, I think you're going to do amazing at it. And I love the
Thank you.
idea of it. How do you relate that to calling?
You like deep topics too, Lord
I
Jesus.
I do, I do.
You're bringing it.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk
How do
about
I
unconventional
relate my
leaders.
work to calling?
Yeah,
This is my answer for today, and it may change next week. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about being lit up and the power behind being lit up as a human. So I work with a lot of really awesome people who are very good at a certain skill set in my business. Our agency, we work with service providers, people who have spent years and years building a certain thing, and now they're trying to figure out how to translate that online, whether it's products or social or whatever. Without fail, most will say, well, how do I do this? What's the right way? What's going to work? They're looking for a formula, and there are formulas, and they're awesome, and I'm all about tips, tricks, hacks, all that stuff. It's interesting. But that's not what moves people. What moves someone is seeing another human being lit up about
yeah,
something.
yeah.
We are drawn to passion and heart and conviction, even if we don't agree with it.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
Because it's a hint towards what our human nature is like while we're here, the life, the essence. And now obviously when I went to the gym today with no makeup on and looked like a ragamuffin and was late taking my kids to school and all that stuff, I wasn't like lit up this morning, but I've been returning back to that thought over and over again of how do I stay in a lit up space and return back to my heart and passion and what I believe in. Because when I'm lit up, I'm operating in my highest calling. I
Yeah,
am serving other people. I don't have to convince you of the right way of doing things. If I can have an encounter with you where I lift your spirit and being in my energy and my presence is an uplifting, thing. I'm not talking about being positive, but I'm talking about like, damn, there's something lit up in her and I want to be lit up
right,
too.
right, right.
That's calling to me right now. So
Yeah,
how do I decipher? I feel like making these videos, I'm very lit up making them. I really am passionate about these topics. I love these topics.
yeah.
And I don't think my editing is that great. I don't think my storytelling is that great. I'm out of focus a lot. I don't know if you recognize that because I move quite a bit. Um, but I think the reason they're hitting and making some kind of difference with people is because people believe me,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's refreshing. So all that to say, long-winded answer again, how do I wrestle with my calling right now? I think I'm thinking less about what is my quote calling on paper and thinking about, am I living in a state of passion and conviction and attached to something higher than me? And maybe I can't articulate what my job description calling is all the time, but I'm living in it when you meet me. And that's what I want.
I love that. I love that. And when it comes to, that thing that lights you up, that thing that just that you can tell when somebody is authentically lit up by something and
Yes.
passionate about it.
Yes.
In the entrepreneur realm and in the business realm, you see a lot of people just pursuing the shiny objects,
Yes.
and they don't really show a whole lot of passion and drive from inside. It's like, I'm following, this is the best new funnel, this is the best new AI, this is the best new whatever, crypto this and whatever. And they're pursuing these things, and nothing wrong with it. Go for it
Mhm.
if that's who you are. But then you see the people that are in a place where they're in their passion. That fire inside of them is burning, and they're just like, they eat, live, breathe this thing, and they have a certainty about it, and they have a fire about it.
Mhm.
That is invigorating, and I think you're right. People are drawn to that. People, when they see somebody that's passionate and on fire around whatever topic it is, you are drawn to them because there's a certain level of certainty and confidence and um, uh, uh, you know, fire that you're just attracted to. And I think we're naturally
Totally.
attracted to that. And so that could be both good and bad. And so, when it comes to, what you're pursuing and your calling, I love the work you do with creatives. I love your passion for creatives. At heart, you're a creative. Are you doing all this editing yourself as well?
Yes.
Wow.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I'm doing all this myself and I don't enjoy it as much as, I mean, I do it out
I
of
mean, I don't enjoy it
necessity.
all the time. I do have
Yeah.
a VA, who does, like, I'll send her, like, cut one, and she'll take out my ums and my spaces where I'm looking at my
Yeah.
script or my kids yelling, and I go downstairs, and she does cut one, but then when she sends it to me, it's usually about 2 minutes, and then my goal is to bring it down to 60 seconds, and then I do all the other stuff.
Yeah. Well done. It is so
Thank
good.
you.
And I do encourage those listening to go check out Heather's work. It is really, really good stuff. So when it comes to, the calling and the passion, when you work with unconventional leaders, when you
Mhm.
work with people that are needing help, how do you help them get unstuck? Like, how do you help them with clarity and making, the decisions they need to make?
A few ways. There's kinda like the internal work way, which, back to your point about everything comes around, I let go of my therapy license, but I still do a lot of that. And
You
then
still
there's
have
the,
the toolbox.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. There's the tactical way. So the internal way, um, what I was talking about with passion earlier, I'm constantly trying to turn the head to the person and remind them of what they're doing again. Because, like, I had somebody the other day she's in the middle of a big launch and she's super stressed about it. And there's all these different techniques. And she's like, how many emails should we be sending? And what's the right hashtags I should use? And which platform, blah, blah. And she's like visibly shook. And I'm like,
Mm,
this launch is not going to work out, not because you're not doing the right things. It's because you're coming at it from an energetic place of fear and defeat and panic and dread. And even if you do everything right, people are going to feel that on you. And this whole thing, the essence of it,
right.
is not going to work. And I'm not a manifesting blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm not in that, but I am about energy. And
Yeah.
people either want to work with you or they don't. So part of the internal work is, turning her head. I said, the next 2-3 days, I don't want you to think about this launch at all. I want you to remind yourself and get relit up about this topic and why we're even
Yeah.
here. And
Yeah.
let's return back to that. So there's a lot of element of that. On the kind of technician side, I do a lot of deadlines, and that's it. We're launching, we're doing things. Indecision is such a huge barrier for visionaries, where, back to the whiteboard, there's so many things I could be doing, which one should I do, that they just run in circles over and over again. So they sometimes need folks like me who's not in love with them or not their cousin or whatever, and they're like, yo, Paul, launch day's the
Yeah.
24th. I'm hitting publish on this,
Yeah.
whether you're ready
Yeah.
for it or not.
Yeah.
Because action creates clarity, and I tell people that all
Right.
the time. You're not going to figure out what something is until you do it, and then
Right.
it will tell you what it is, right?
I have the mug for that. Clarity through action. How's that?
Oh my God, we're besties. Do you know I quote that daily? That quote.
Yeah, I got the t-shirt. Well, I'm wearing a different t-shirt today, but I actually created like a bunch of t-shirts that say clarity through action.
Where's
Sometimes
your store? I'm
well, I don't think
buying
I've
one.
put that. Yeah, I don't think I've put those on the store, but I will because people have asked about them. I've got a store called imagos.com for other stuff, but I will put it up there and I'll share
Lord
it with you.
Jesus, Paul, I will wear that shirt in one of my videos. I love that quote.
Because
Seriously.
I've found this to be true. I've done this for so long that sometimes you just got to take action and then the clarity comes.
Preach.
And so
Preach.
many people get stuck on perfect or stuck on I need everything aligned. I need that whiteboard needs a very clear path. And sometimes
Mhm.
it's like, no, you just need to take action on this one thing and you'll get clarity and you'll know what that next step is once you do that, because you could have all kinds of ideas in your head and all
Yep.
kinds of plans. And I think it was Tyson that said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? And
Yep.
so sometimes that punch in the face comes early, sometimes it comes late, but you're not going to get punched unless you get in the ring, right? And
Preach.
so
Preach.
talk to me. You mentioned the whiteboard. So what are some things that you use to help people get clarity when they're in that place that they're stuck and they're like, I don't know what to do, and where do I go from here, and who am I, and what am I about? Where does all the experience, your creator, your therapist, your ministry, all of
Yep.
that, how does that come together to give them clarity?
I usually start with what's in your hand right now. So lowest hanging fruit and then building. So working with visionaries, they're usually, and when I say visionaries, what I mean by that is people with big ideas, big heart, big vision, big passion for changing the whole wide world. Those are the people I roll with. I get
Yeah.
them. I like them. But with having your head in the clouds, sometimes you miss the easy, quick win at the top, you know? And I'm all about building momentum. So we need to start with something small and very, very achievable and build and build and build and build and build. And that goes against people's ego because they're like, I want the biggest brand in the world. I want everybody to know, I want Joe Rogan podcast and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, okay, but have you even posted to your Instagram in a month? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you're telling
Yeah.
me that you're going to be faithful with something big when you are not faithful with something small. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Here goes the ministry stuff. I love that scripture. He who is faithful with a little can be trusted with a lot. Lock it or leave it. That's some wisdom right there.
Right.
So, what is the lowest hanging fruit right now? And are we being faithful and consistent? And then are we building from there? Also, too, really going slim and having less instead of doing more. I think that's really, really important
Yeah.
because we think we're limiting ourselves by not doing everything when really we're watering down our efforts and not building traction. When you can build traction in one area, you start building steam and you start building in cash flow and you start building in attraction, and then you can start building out bigger teams. But if you start out of the gate with that, you're going to get burnt out, you're going to get watered down, and you're not going to be as effective. So usually I come in and bust everybody's bubble because they don't like that.
Yeah.
But that's how you build something big.
Right, right. Absolutely love that because yeah, small wins. I love that because yeah, sometimes you get just stuck in I've got to have funnels and email
Mm,
sequences and
mhm.
chatbots on my web. I've got to have all this stuff in place before I can get going, and so you haven't even tested out if your idea is relevant or if it's
Preach it.
you haven't even seen
Yes.
if the market actually cares
Yes.
about what you're doing.
Or
And
if you
so
like it.
yeah, 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 exactly. Because you could launch it and you're like, this is nothing like I thought it would be.
Totally.
And so then you've invested a lot of time and energy in doing something that you totally feel, no, that's actually not what I want to do.
Yep.
It's not the kind of product or the service or the people or whatever. And so I love that
Yep.
that's part of what you do is yeah, let's start with some small wins. Let's get a phase one. Now let's
Mhm.
get some foundational things, and then let's see how that goes, and then we can add the other stuff. But you don't
Totally.
have to feel that you have it all in place before you launch that thing. And so, where when you help them with that launch, you're helping them get unstuck. You're helping them move forward. What is the first thing that you find that they have to readjust? The first thing that really is a head smack to them that they say, "Oh my goodness, yeah, I didn't see this."
Going narrow so you can go wide, especially in their messaging. And I internally hate everything I'm about to say. It is so annoying and unfun and whatever. Like, I don't like it. It's true though that when you're trying to build traction, you have to go super super clear. I'm not going to say the word niche. I'm not going to say it, but honing in on one particular focus and being very, very clear. And I'm guilty of this too, where we go creative over clear. And so what I told somebody yesterday, I said, let's start with clear and then add the creative element as opposed to being creative and just seeing if we can decipher the clear. So if you think
Yeah.
about, a name that you have or a slogan or whatever, let's boil it down to the most basic, clear statement that we can make and then come in and get creative with that.
Love
That
that.
hurts
Love that.
my heart and it's difficult, but it's just I've seen too much data. I've experienced it too much that whenever I go narrow, things build. I- It's creative restriction. If you think
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
we just need to
Yeah.
reframe it a little bit, I think.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
love that you need to get clear before you get creative. And I think that's a sign of creative maturity. Because as a young designer, it's as a young creative, it's easy to want to be super creative and do this and do that, but it's not clear. When it comes to designing a brand or designing, I remember as a young designer, creating ads, and it was super cool, and like all the effects in
Mm,
Photoshop and all of that stuff, and then. It's like, yeah, but what's the message? Like, are they actually
I
getting the
know.
message, or is the hey, you forgot the call to action? Like, it was super creative and everybody was like, awesome. And honestly, I don't think it's a young designer thing. I don't think it's a young creative, because there are agencies that create stuff to impress other agencies, and to win the Addies, to win the awards, and they lose focus, they lose clarity of who am I helping, what am I helping them with, what is the purpose of this, all of
Mm,
the basic stuff. And so I think that's really good that in helping your clients, you're doing that. You're like,
yeah.
let's get clarity before we get creativity, and we can always add the creativity, but unless we have clarity, we're going to miss the mark.
And it's all it's all a reframe. It's all in the way that we look at it. Like I was just on a call with somebody who was very, very frustrated saying, I don't want to be niche down, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking it's all in your perspective. You can look at it as somebody's trying to suck the life out of you, or you can look at it as a really cool creative challenge and a strategy to elevate, your brand of like, ooh, step one. I'm going to target this, 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 and say this, 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 and I'm going to build some traction. And then step two, I'm going to expand and do that. It's not a restrictive thing. It's actually like stepping on the gas because you're in control of something and you're guiding it versus just willy nilly throwing something out there and just hoping people connect with it. But total side note, Paul, before I forget, have you been to Creative South?
Do you know what? I've wanted to, and I have it on my list of places to go. Ah, nice. I saw that you just spoke at that. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
you said designer. I'm like, it's so embarrassing is I think I may have been, I may be wrong, one of, if not the only speaker who is not a designer. So my slideshow was shit. And these designers get up there and it's like crazy animations and fonts. And like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, they're going to hate me. I got up there with like a Google slide with black and white lettering that just has one word on it that's like,
Yeah.
make.
That's awesome. That's
It was
awesome. Well,
humiliating. But anyway.
do you know what? Sometimes simplicity is better than going all crazy, because I think that's where a lot of immature people, when it comes to even creativity, if they're not creative, they try and be creative, and by trying to be creative, they go extra, and by going extra, they show that they're not creative. And so I think
That's
sometimes
so good.
a better thing is go simplicity.
Yeah.
If you can't afford a designer, if you can't
Yeah.
afford somebody to make your stuff, instead of trying to be creative, if you're not creative, go simple. Go
Yeah.
clean, go smart, and it'll look creative.
Yeah.
And so I think what you did was brilliant. I think just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Don't go crazy with it. And so what did you speak about at Creative South? Let me hear about that a little bit. What
Short
did you
form
talk about?
video. So it
Okay.
was storytelling in 60 seconds. So the whole premise was kind of what we've talked about so far, which was creative restriction. I talked a lot about how going viral doesn't do anything necessarily unless you've built a body of work. I've gone viral multiple times prior to the chair series, and my following never grew. I never got good connections. Nothing ever happened from it other than I have a cool story to tell that nobody cares about. Um, so I talked a lot about that, and then we broke down kind of the essence of a video. So hooks, uh, building tension in the middle to keep people engaged, and then good endings. And then at the end, I just wrapped it up talking about how this whole muscle of getting on the internet and putting your face and your voice out there is not a natural thing. It doesn't People aren't more talented than you. They've just gone through the shit and did it anyway, kind of like what you and I were just talking about. So that was the whole essence of the talk.
I love that.
Yeah.
And short form video, guys, I'm serious. If you want to learn some stuff, want to see some cool stuff, check out Heather's stuff. It's just amazing. One thing that you mentioned about the viral thing that just popped in my head, and let me know what you think about this. Is, you've gone viral several times, but is to me, going viral is basically like standing up in a stadium
Mhm.
and screaming at the top of your lungs, looking weird, doing something. You get attention. Everybody looks at you for 15 seconds and then moves on because you don't have a plan beyond that, right?
Yep.
And so I think, with going viral, I think it's awesome, it's amazing, but it's that you got attention in a stadium and then attention moved elsewhere, unless you have some sort of a plan, to do something with that attention. And so, when it came to, the viral stuff that you've done, you said it didn't lead to anything. Have you changed strategy in, okay,
Mhm.
next viral, here's what I want to do with that?
Yeah, so the viral videos that I've done before, I mean, my biggest one hit if it did not hit 10 million, it was close to 10 million
Oh,
views, and, there was a series that I did. I did a series of 4 videos, and one went 10 million, the others were in, like, 1 million, whatever. There was just a lot of traction. Um, I was did a series called How Kids Get Out of Cars, and nothing happened. So, if you looked at my other videos, I had podcasting clips, I had some weird sketch stuff, I was just kinda all over the place. So, if you think about your own behavior, if you watch a video and you like it and you go click on that creator and they don't have other content related to that, you're gonna ignore them, right? But if
yeah,
that person's screaming in the auditorium and then you see, behind them, there's a whole body of work of other things that they've done that are very, very similar to that. Let's say they're singing in that auditorium, like, "La, la," and you're like, damn, this is a jam. And then you look and behind them is like a whole room full of other music and songs. You'll probably go follow that person. But if behind them is like them eating ice cream with Aunt Janet and, their trip to Minnesota, and it's just this random, you're not gonna follow that creator. So, what I do differently now, it's not that I don't wanna, quote, "go viral" or my videos do well, but I noticed when I did Connor Price's, that was the first video that went viral on this series, and it wasn't huge. I think it's at 1.8 million. It's not like my biggest video ever, but that one brought in, I was at 5,000 followers, and then I was over 25,000, 25
wow,
thousand. It brought
wow.
in, I wanna say it was, I'm not doing their math right, 19 to 20,000 people within the span of a couple of months. And the reason is because they looked at Connor's video and then they went to my profile and I had 10 other videos that were in the chair. And they're like, oh, this is what she does. She makes these things. I like that. Um, so all that to say, build a body of work and let go of going viral. And then when you
Yeah.
do go viral, that body of work will reap benefits for you. Even Jax, I don't know if you follow Jax. She does the Victoria's Secret song, "I'm a Victoria's Secret."
No, I
You
don't.
don't Oh, you should look it up, it's great.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's bashing Victoria's Secret, but she's a musician and she made all these videos, nobody watched it, it's all her music, and one video did really well. They went to her profile, they saw all her other songs, and now she was at Macy's Day Parade, you know?
Wow.
Um, so she said, "I'm so glad I did those smaller videos before
Yeah.
when no one was watching."
That is so good. I mean, that alone is a good head smack for any kind of content creator. Is, yeah, create that body of work, because yeah, that one time attention that you might get would last either 15 seconds and then people just move on because
Yep,
they don't
yep,
see a trend, they don't see a habit, they don't see a consistency, and so they'll just move on. They just, okay,
yep,
cool, that was awesome,
yep, yep.
like, and moving on. And I love what you just shared there. I think that's absolutely brilliant. So for the person, as we're wrapping up here, for the person that is kind of on that creative journey, you had several things that it seems like the transition was crying between each thing that happened.
I cry a
But
lot.
yeah, between for somebody on a similar kind of journey, or for a younger version of you, what would you tell them that they're in that place that you once were? What would you tell them?
Trust your instincts. Like, put your feet on the ground and be really still and listen to what your gut is telling you to do. Um, you can trust it. I'm not a religious person anymore. I still do believe in God, and I believe that there's something, I don't give a rat's ass what you call it, moving on our behalf and nudging us and just hinting towards us. But we're so busy and things are so loud that getting still and quiet and really tuning into that still small voice is so important, and you can trust it. And it's usually going to tell you something that's going to scare the hell out of you to do. But when you do it, it's not going to be as scary as you think. And everything is going to, like, I always picture like the flashlight on the ground, and you can only see the couple steps up ahead of you, but until you move, that light's not going to go any further. So
Right.
trust it. Be around people who are as lit up as you, or be alone.
Yeah.
I hate saying that, but the normalcy of what is appropriate and acceptable in your life, you have to create that, where people are like, oh, aren't you embarrassed to be on camera and do all these things? I'm like, no, because all my friends are creators and I hang out with creators, and those are, I don't hang out with people who think it's stupid.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
curate, be open to people, but have community who's
Right.
pushing you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so valuable because yeah, it's hard to follow a vision where people are constantly looking at it negatively, and
Oh
looking
yeah.
at it like, oh, you're just trying to kind of get attention,
Nope.
and to keep going if that's the people that you're around is tough, because you're feeling, well, is this prideful?
Yeah.
Am I full of
Yeah.
myself?
Follow a trend. Yeah.
And so I think definitely changing that uh the birds that you're with, the birds of a
Mhm.
feather flocking together, is changing the people around you, and looking at who is actually adding to my life, and who is
Preach.
actually sucking away my dreams,
Preach. Preach.
and being around that type of person, I think, makes a huge impact. And finding those people that encourage you along that journey, I think, is so valuable as well, that say, hey, I'm here for you. Don't fully get what you're doing, and they don't even have
Yep.
to be in your space. They could just be like, hey, I don't get it, but I'm for you. Keep
Amen.
going, keep going.
Amen. Amen. That's huge.
Well, Heather, this has been amazing. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And so
Me
if people want to
too.
be a part of your world, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
At Heather Parady, Parady, pretty much everywhere. I know I probably should be on LinkedIn a little bit more, but it's still just not my vibe. It's just not my vibe. I'm there, but most social platforms you can find me there, and I'm pretty active.
That's awesome. And I know we could probably talk creativity for another couple of hours. I
Oh,
absolutely love talking
totally. I love
creativity
it.
and
I
everything. And
I
maybe
never
we'll do
get
this
bored.
again.
Never get
And
bored of it.
well, and I think you had mentioned, about Creative South too, is that you are surrounded by designers, and you're not a designer, but I think a creative is a creative is a
Yeah,
creative, and you just express it different ways.
totally.
And I love the creativity that you show, the stuff that you're putting out there.
Thank you.
And I do encourage everybody to look you up and connect with you and follow you. And they'll not only learn stuff, they'll be entertained, and they'll be enriched by it. And they'll get a
Thank
couple of
you.
head smacks along the way.
It's been an honor. This was so much fun. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for joining us on the Head Smack podcast. We've shared some candid stories and life-changing ideas. And now it's your time to act. First, take bold action on just one idea and see how your life can radically change. Secondly, whatever platform you're listening to this on, please rate it, share it, and leave a comment. Let us know where this episode impacted you. I appreciate you giving me your time, and don't forget to join us for our next Misfit conversation.